Hello and welcome. Thanks for joining me, astrologer Patrick Arundell, for your in-depth November horoscope video for the Sun or the Ascendant. Before I begin, I'd like to briefly tell you about my year 2021 personal horoscope special package. This gives you a forecast and a character analysis. But also if you order now in 2020, I'll give you the rest of this year free. Get 30% off this package based on your time, date and place of birth. It's totally individual to you and will give you searing insights into what you can expect in the months ahead. Please see beneath this video to click on the link to order. Hello Aries and welcome to your November monthly forecast. Sometimes in astrology we have to just draw back a little bit and see the big picture, and then drill down into the detail of the month itself. So the big picture for you, I want to cast your mind back to the middle of May, because Mars, your ruling planet, was in quite a sluggish location for you in the watery Pisces. It emerged into your sign at the end of June, the 27th, and that probably really gave you a sense that things were starting to move. Obviously, it's been a very tricky year with COVID for everybody, but within the scope of COVID, I think at the end of June, you started to gain traction. Now, Mars being in your sign is wonderful because it's known as being in dignity, and therefore your natural attributes of initiation, drive, determination, and go-gettingness have really been given a showcase until the 9th of September. Because on the 9th of September, Mars started to track backwards in a retrograde. And also from the 27th of July, Mars also started to buttress up against, in a right angle, the planets that have been so influential this year in the sign of Capricorn, which is Saturn, Pluto and Jupiter. Now those guys for you are all about success, your role in life, how you manifest your authority. And because they've been at a right angle with your more individual desires, it may have felt that the weight of the world at times was on your shoulders, particularly if you haven't been able to really be much more free-spirited and demonstrate to people just how talented you can be. So that retrograde's been going on since the 9th of September, but the frustration really began at the end of July. Now this month we can celebrate three things. On the 2nd, Mercury goes forwards. On the 14th, that's joined by Mars, your ruler. Yes, he shakes off the restrictions and starts to power forwards. Just to let you know, Mars has been going slower and has been closer to the Earth this year than he has for 15 years. So it has been a very unusual ecliptic. And that's why we've had this extended 6-month transit, which is going to go on right through to the 6th of January next year. In the fullness of time, I think you'll see that Mars has been a great asset to you. Now, the third piece of information to tell you is that on the 29th of this month, Neptune, the planet of dreams, which is in a very watery part of your situation, very psychological and very sensitive, that's also been in retrograde for 5 long months, and that comes to a close. So I think Mercury going forwards, Mars going forwards, Neptune going forwards, it's all going to be for your greater good. So let's now dial back down into that intimate detail for this month. So at the very start of this month, the Sun is in your part of your situation to do with transformations. In a practical sense, this could see you thinking about things like pensions, investments, savings, anything to do with building, or if you're more of an entrepreneurial person, marshalling your longer term resources around a business venture. But in the first couple of days, the Sun is opposed by Uranus, the planet of disruption, the planet of restlessness, which is in your second house of everyday finance. So there could be something that starts this month off where you're finding you're having to juggle. Imagine the Two of Coins card in tarot. I think this comes up for me where maybe you're having to be a little bit flexible about keeping your resources moving around just to keep things in trim. But there could be a sudden opportunity to make money as much as an expense that comes up, but it could be positive too. Now, in the first 10 days of this month, Mercury, going forwards now, after that retrograde, which began in the sign of Scorpio, in fact, the shadow period began on the 27th of September before the retrograde kicked in on the 14th of October, but it's inverted back into the sign of Libra, where it's met by Venus, the ruler of Libra. So the relating parts of your situation are really quite highlighted in your situation as November begins. But Mercury is going to be challenged by Saturn in the first 10 days of this month. And you may be thinking, oh, blimey, Patrick, here we go again. But what I would say to you, Mercury square Saturn with Mercury in your sector of relating simply means don't promise anything you can't do. It means being very clear about what you're prepared to do, particularly around business contracts or work. So if someone offers you a job or a deal and it seems very attractive, just be very aware of the small print to see that there aren't any kind of clauses in there which actually could be quite restrictive for you. You know, anything to do with the terms and conditions around, say, when you're not well, or perhaps the amount of time you get off for vacations and stuff like that. So just be conscious of the detail. It doesn't necessarily have to be very bad, but it could mean that someone in your world who's a little bit more of an authority figure, perhaps an older person in the family, maybe someone who seems to be a little bit on your case, but actually perhaps they're trying to protect you in some way by guiding your moves. But as I said, Venus, for the first 11 days of this month, is flourishing in the sign of Libra, which it governs. So it really is at its best here. It's in its dignity. And that can bring some harmonizing vibes to bear initially. But from the 12th to the 29th, Venus goes through a series of squares. It begins initially with a square with Pluto. And then it goes on to have a square with Jupiter, and then finally with Saturn. So it's going to pick up with those three big beasts in the sign of Capricorn. And it kind of suggests to me that even if you try to use charm in order to try to build up your interactions with others, there's still going to be quite an exacting environment around relationships in general, whether it's personal, whether it's around friendships, whether it's around professional ties. It's almost as if you really have to stay very self-disciplined about what you're saying. So although Mars is going to start to go forward from the 14th, which will give you a gust of extra drive and determination, I think it's almost as if you have to take the more conservative route in situations. And that means playing by well-established rules. It's not necessarily which way you vote, so I mean conservative with a small c. So it means really confining yourself in some ways. It's not going to enable you to be quite as free-spirited. However, we do have on the 11th Mercury moving into the sign of Scorpio, which of course it's done before. It's returning back to this position. It eventually comes out of shadow this month on the 19th, ending an epic long transit which has mainly been in Scorpio, that brief sojourn into Libra, which began on the 27th of September. But there may be something that you need to rethink, and it could be about a financial or business matter, and it could initially seem a little bit frustrating. But in week 2 of this month, if you want to use your flair and imagination to improve your financial situation, that's going to be a great opportunity to time it, because then the Sun is forging a very powerful link with Neptune. It could also be a time when you're more self-sacrificing to others and you see or engage in a situation which in some way transforms you at a more psychological but very uplifting level. Now, it's also true that from the 9th to the 18th, the Sun forges a brilliant angle to Jupiter. Now, that's much more entrepreneurial and can really see you letting out the clutch when it comes to some of your hopes. It's about understanding that this is or has been an incredibly complex astrological year. Every astrologer predicted this in advance, I must say. We couldn't necessarily predict the virus. I did say when I was preparing the year 2020 videos that Moon would be conjunct Neptune for the world. And obviously Neptune does influence gases and it influences infectious diseases. And the Moon is our home. Isn't that incredible? So there was a hint there. But by the 21st of this month, the Sun moves into such a free-spirited part of your scope. You're really going to be so much happier with this. It is true that on the 21st too, Venus dives deep into the sultry Scorpio. And this could be an interesting time for your love life. Things can get much hotter and much more passionate whether you're hitched or not, because someone could come into your world who really makes your pulse race if you are single. By the 30th, it is true that we do have an annular eclipse, a lunar eclipse, and this one's in Gemini. And I think it's important to understand that we are moving into a period of an eclipse series which features the signs of Sagittarius and also Gemini. And in December, the month following this one, we have a glorious solar eclipse in the sign of Sagittarius, which you are going to absolutely love because it forges a brilliant trine with Mars in your sign. So much to look forward to. So what I would say to you about this month, let's celebrate the fact that Mars is going forwards for mid-month. Let's celebrate the fact that Mercury ends its retrograde in your sector of relationships on the 2nd. But it does seem that you're going to have to be quite constrained in your approach for the first 10 days because Mercury is being challenged by Saturn. Then Venus, the natural relator of the Zodiac, well, that up until the 20th is having a difficult time with that cluster of 3 planets in Capricorn. So once more, however much you try to win people over, it could seem that others are a bit cool, a bit standoffish, not really very engaged by what you have to say. But once the Sun moves on the 21st into Sagittarius, I do feel that you're going to feel so much lighter. And do you know, we are going to see a little bit of a hit between Mars in your sign and Saturn right at the end of this year. And I do think it's important just for now, in this month, to just appreciate that we're coming through what has been a quite epic experience for every single one of us. And I think that you will emerge from the end of this year with a much clearer understanding of your direction of travel. And it may be that some of the ambitions that you've been working towards over many years in some cases have actually lost their appeal. And you want to recalibrate your point of action in a much more up-to-date way. And I think therefore this month could well be one of great transition. But for now, take care, stay safe, good luck and goodbye.